Well, good afternoon, councillors, those here in attendance and those who might be streaming in or watching in through our first live action version of Council 2024. It's great to have everybody here. Nice to see so many people coming in and representing their community. As we do meet here today, we also acknowledge the community, the Palawa people. It is their original and ongoing unceded lands that we do meet here on behalf of today. So please be seated. I do have two apologies here, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Gibson, as we move through agenda item number 1. At agenda item number 2, mayoral acknowledgements, I would like to make some acknowledgements on behalf of council here today. So if you will just bear with me for a moment as I read through a description as then we get to our presentation. So the City of Launceston has been recognised at the 2024 National Economic Development Awards for Excellence in Melbourne. Held during the 24 National Economic Development Conference, the awards are designed to celebrate organisations and individuals who drive sustainable growth and community prosperity across Australia. City of Launceston Economical Development Officer Karishma was presented with the Economic Development Rising Star Leadership Award, which recognises emerging leaders in the economic development sector. Karishma was recognised for her work facilitating economic development programs on behalf of the City of Launceston, including Business Connect Workshop, aimed at supporting the city's small business sector. The City of Launceston also took out an award in the Economic Development Recovery and Resilience category for its Business Activity Survey, which analyses business activity in Launceston's CBD in detail. The Council's data analyst, Tony McDonald, accepted the award on behalf of the project team on the night, and the Business Activity Survey was launched this year, having evolved from the Council's former CBD retail shop occupancy surveys. The new system can categorise more than 30 types of businesses and can record features like on-street dining offerings. The data of the Business Activity Survey is captured by officers and members of the Launceston Central using smartphones and uploaded to the database, allowing for real-time updates when businesses open and close. So it is with great pleasure that we do get to ask Karishma to come forward to receive her Rising Star Award. So I think a round of applause as Karishma comes forward. I try not to put my finger marks on these ones too. And I think Alex is coming forward. So Alex Crothers to please come forward on behalf of Tony, who accepted on the night. So round of applause as Alex comes forward. Excellent. Thank you very much. And moving forward to agenda item number 3. Declarations of interest. A councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Do we have any declarations of interest here today? No declarations noting that there's grants and sponsorships. We're all okay? Neighbourhood house, perhaps? In sponsorship and grants. So do you have off the top of your head what that looks like on the agenda item? 17.1. Cool. Any others? We'll deal with them when we get to them just in case. That's okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, moving forward to the confirmation of minutes at 4.1. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council held on the 17th of October be confirmed as true and correct record. Moved by Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Palmer. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 5, we have council workshops. 5.1 is the council workshops conducted from the 17th of October, with the recommendation being that council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for the purposes described and published as a part of this agenda. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris, anything you would like to speak to in regards to the workshops?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly to say that it doesn't include today's council workshop, but it does include what we talked about on the 17th, which was the UTAS stadium transfer, the conditions around that, and also the lease to the Launceston History Centre at the Old Frederick Street kindergarten building that council has, and how that will be potentially moved forward. So these are just some of the things that we do talk about in workshop.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker, any other comments around the table around workshops? Nothing further to close? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? It's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, we have at 6, councillors' leave of absence, which will be discussed as a part of closed council agenda item 23.3. 17, we do have a community report here today at 17.1, the Society of Women's Writers Tasmania, presented by Judy Cochrane. Thank you, Judy.
My name is, oh, sorry.
No, that's good. That's
loud.
good.
Woo. My name is Judy Corcoran and I'm a member of the Society of Women Writers Tasmania. We're part of a not-for-profit national organisation with members meeting monthly to discuss books, both as published authors and enthusiastic wordsmiths, learning how to progress as writers from basic to publishing their first novel. The experience of these published authors is invaluable in mentoring and encouraging the less experienced in the ups and downs of publishing their first novel or memoir. Our meetings are informal and friendly with exercises in various forms of writing. We have fun sharing short stories and remain stimulated by the enthusiasm of the group. The aim of the Society is to encourage interest in writing and to assist those who wish to further their writing skills in the written word. I'm hoping to encourage others to join us in our monthly meetings, which are held on the first Monday of the month in the Launceston Library. Thank you for this opportunity. We appreciate your interest in the Society of Women Writers Tasmania. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Public question time is agenda item number 8 with 8.1. Public questions on notice. They are identified and published as a part of this agenda. At 8.2, public questions without notice. Noting that the rules and regulations, they're displayed and available upon entry. You may ask a total of 3 questions each. Public questions without notice. Any public questions without notice? Okay. Mr. Smith?
No, thank you, Mr. It's complicated.
Okay, thank you. No, that's okay. All right, moving forward then. We have no petitions or deputations identified as a part of this agenda. So we move into Planning Authority. Under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in agenda item 11. At 11.1, we have DA 312, which is Sandown Road. Before we move through to a recommendation, I've got 2 noted speakers. To this, I have Mr. Dutton and Erica, Miss Maxwell. So, Bruce, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. You've probably read the representation, I hope you have, but I just want to speak to it. I know some of you councillors, and you would know that my wife and I have spent our entire life devoted to the care of people who are underprivileged in the human services sector. And my great concern is that in Queechee Road we have an accident that's waiting to happen. All of you who are involved in social welfare know that prevention is better than cure. And so this is our attempt, my attempt, the attempts of people in our street to try and do something to make sure there's not a major accident. It's a narrow road with 2 curves in it. It's dangerous. And the amount of traffic, not so much the amount of traffic, it's the type of traffic that comes. Recreational vehicles and quite long caravans driven by big 4x4s. I think I remember back from when I did angular velocity of a projectile at the school, you can't go around a corner at a particular speed, and so they inevitably cut the corner. Most of those vehicles driving cut the corner, and to get up the hill they rev up rather than go down a gear. to get the speed up to go around. I understand why they're doing it. It's a lovely place to go to. My wife and I go there for coffee at Mac's all the time. It's a good place. But my great concern is that the traffic needs to be calmed. It's just too dangerous. It is an accident waiting to happen. So we've been petitioning the council for about 9 or 10 years, I think, to try and attempt to do something about it. And I'm really grateful for the action that was taken to put an unbroken line and put no standing signs, but they haven't made any difference. I had a great conversation with Fintan on the phone, and I'm grateful for him taking the time to do that. And I understand that in the terms of this development application, it may be impossible for you to take that into consideration. I know that there's been a representation about this fact that, well, this traffic will not make a significant difference, and perhaps it won't, but over the last 10 years and over the last 4 years, it's obvious that there's more and more RVs travelling up there. There's more and more places for them to park. Is that my 2-minute warning, is it? Okay. So it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's this and then this and then this and then this and this. We've got to make a stop to it at some stage. I've put in a expression of interest thing, whatever it's called. I've got a concern, and so if that's the way to deal with it, whatever. But let's make sure we do something about this before something tragic happens. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Erica?
America Maxwell, I also live on Queechy Road. Council's failure to address road safety issues on Queechy Road underlies our objection to this application. We contend that if the owners at 55 Sandown Road wish to expand their commercial operations, then they should be required to develop alternative access and not solely require on Queechy Road, a residential street that's not being designed for commercial traffic, let alone large caravans and motorhomes. When Old Mac's Caravan and Motorhome Park was proposed, Queechy Road residents expressed their concerns to council and they were dismissed. Unlike hotels, the existing business at Old Mac's has no limit on the number of bookings it accepts. Its website states, during extra busy periods, we open the paddock for overflow. In other words, there's no restriction on the extra traffic that goes on Queechy Road to access Old Mac's. We contend that this new business needs to be assessed within the context of the traffic associated with neighbouring businesses and cannot be considered in isolation. So, reporting that it's only going to make a minor difference is irrelevant when there is no control. From our perspective, it will exacerbate the traffic problem we're currently experiencing. Consider the chaos that will eventuate if a fire were to ever occur, and remember that this building is in a rural zone with a high risk fire rating. Residents have requested council address road safety issues, as Bruce said, both in the past and as recently as 2023. And the new resident who put in an objection was council declined. So if council approves this, then we, the residents, feel that there needs to be more to be done than just lowering a speed limit or putting keep to the left. I have tried. I have put keep left signs up the road. It makes no difference. So as Bruce said, please take action. Please listen to us. We have been asking for over 10 years before something happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Were there any further speakers to the item before we get to the recommendation? Okay, we'll move forward to that recommendation. The recommendation is that council approve a permit be granted for sports and recreational construction of an outdoor recreational facility, including sauna, spa and ice bath, at 55 Sandown Road, Norwood, subject to the published conditions. Somebody to move to start the discussion. Councillor Harris? Seconded by Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Bruce and Erica for your thoughts. It is a challenge because as a planning authority, as we sit, the conditions of the road, the access road, is probably not being considered in the four standards. So I might just ask that very question of the Mayor or the staff as to whether the four discretions, that is rural zone discretionary use twice, plus the Natural Assets Code or the Scenic Protection Code, whether any of those have any relevance to the volume of traffic on the access road being Queechee Road.
General Manager Richard?
This matter is dealt with in the assessment in clause C 3.5.1. It's the council officer's assessment that this application meets the acceptable solution for traffic generation. That isn't necessarily, though, we are not necessarily assessing the safety of Queechee Road generally in that, just that the generation of this sauna meets the acceptable solution. From the planning perspective, we are presuming Queechee Road is safe because it has to be safe for all users of the road, not just the people who come and use the sauna.
Thank you. And I guess that brings me to my speech on this. The planning application for a sauna and cool bath is something that in itself will probably not generate a huge volume of additional motor vehicle, motor campers, caravans, motorhomes is the word I'm looking for, because they will be there camping in Old Max as it is. It is a new business to the site that actually is attractive, and certainly my daughter, who's in her late 20s, finds the one up at Derby very attractive, and I certainly wouldn't have driven 2 hours to have a cold bath and jump into the cold lake, but her and her friends certainly do. So I do think it will attract a different type of customer, although it will obviously be a benefit for those who might come in their caravans and want to use it. I understand and hear and know of the concerns on Queechee Road. However, you've got to be careful what you wish for sometimes. The answer to make Queechee Road safer may well be through banned parking on both sides of the street. The answer for that is then cars have room to move, and you must remember that the street is put there for the movement of other vehicles, not for people to park for a period of time. Parking is to be done on your own property, and in fact, when we often look at new development applications, parking concerns of visitors is also one of those many concerns that have to be addressed. So with this particular application, for the new pool, I should call it, although it's not quite a pool, I'm happy to support it because I think it does meet the planning scheme. The four discretions are minor, and as the planning officer said, they've assessed it with the additional traffic. And you must remember that if it's booked in 1 hour lots and you can have up to 4 in there, you potentially have 4 cars moving through there. They come and they go, so that's 8 traffic movements in an hour. That's just over one every, 6, 7 minutes. We do realise they come and go. Some will join together. So the reality is the additional traffic on Queechee Road will in fact be relatively minor. And the other 50 or so houses that already access that, in fact there's probably 70 houses, would be generating hundreds of traffic movements every day. So to add just half a dozen more each hour is not going to really make a lot of difference to the safety of the road. I do understand the safety of the road. Many people do not realise that when a white line is painted in the middle of the road, and particularly when the road is not particularly wide, you cannot park on the side of the road because you must leave a distance between your parked vehicle and the centre line of about 3.5 metres. However, a lot of people don't realise that. That is something that council could address by perhaps painting more yellow lines, or as I said, even perhaps making off-street parking bays in Queechee Road to get people's visitors to park off the actual road surface so that these large vehicles can travel through. However, that's not really what we're here to talk about today. This DA meets most of the requirements and as such, I'm happy to support it as it is today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Before we get to the seconder question, Councillor Dawkins.
Well, thank you. Following on from Councillor Harris's speech, can we talk about the use limitation condition and how that will be assessed? Do we check once a month? Do we do an audit? Do we expect a kind of self-audit from the developers? How do we assess that that's being met?
General Manager Ogulin.
As with all conditions we place on planning permits, if there's cause for concern, we can investigate that, check that, ensure compliance. So it essentially works on that basis. We won't be down there every day counting cars, but if there is cause for concern, we will investigate and ensure compliance with the scheme.
Question, please. And this is more of a broad question about the cumulative effect or the impact of this growing business. Is there another avenue for the residents then to be able to speak with council officers who have that responsibility to ensure that we understand what that cumulative effect is? I understand that there has been interaction in the past, which has been positive, but just to make sure that we know that there's a pathway for that continued collaboration.
I mean, we have Mr. Newby, who is represents the road authority, might want to take this question.
I mean, my very short answer is, of course there is. We can continue the dialogue and investigate issues as they arise.
Great, thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Britton is the seconder.
Thank you very much, Look, I don't really have too much to add to the conversation at the moment. All I can say is that from what those representatives have said, I don't think they really care if this was a Pilates studio or a massage parlour. It is a bath and sauna thing that's going in. I think the only reason this has come to us and we're now here making a decision is because of those representations. It's unfortunate, and as has been said numerous times, we obviously sit as a planning commission, so we can only really take into consideration the planning requirements, and it does meet all the acceptable solutions, and there are only a few minor ones that it has been tested against. To me, this does, scream that these residents do have an issue, and they clearly feel as though council has not addressed those issues. So I'd implore, it probably isn't the space to come up with a plan at the moment, but there is clearly an issue there. They feel like they haven't been heard, and hopefully we can escalate that or do something about that in the future. But as it stands today, I will be supporting the DA as it stands. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Britton. Councillor Pentridge.
This seems to be, once again, that we've, I think there's a couple of cliches. One that says the operation was a success, and no doubt our planning department's ticked all the boxes, but the patient died. We've got a problem here, and once again, I'm disappointed and I feel sorry for the residents. There is a problem there. There has been a problem for a long time. I haven't heard anything. Who's going to address it? It needs to be addressed. Now, it would be unfortunate today to refuse this in light of the fact that it does comply with the regulations. So I see that, once again, as we've ticked all the boxes, right? But at the end of the day, the patient died. And again, the second part of all this is that there's an old cliche, another cliche, the straw that breaks the camel's back. How many more times are we going to pass something? That road and the parking isn't adequate. I'd like to think that out of this today, not that we refuse this application, but that we look at it and work out what we can do. Because that part of the world was built a long time ago. And may I remind you all, it time's moved on. Maybe because of my age, I noticed that more so than anyone else. The time's moved on and it needs to be addressed. And I think at least that might give the residents of that area a little bit of comfort to know that we will do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Walker, a question.
Yeah, to begin with, I mean, the condition that's been put on there is to limit, hopefully, the amount of additional traffic that this will add. But it hasn't been assessed in the context of all the other uses that particular property is being used for. Would that be a correct assessment, that there are multiple uses? There's a restaurant, there's a caravan recreational area, there is a petting farm, there's different uses. The cumulative effect of those has not been assessed in this assessment. Would I be right in saying that?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. In regards to our assessment with that, there is no limitation on how many uses you can have on a site. I did try to address that as part of the report. When we do look at the traffic network, we do look at the existing and then obviously the additional on top. This particular use has met that additional contribution to the network, that being a maximum of 40 vehicle movements annually per day on top of what is already existing. So we have looked at that. We've considered it to be minor and to be acceptable.
Yeah, and it is certainly minor, the additional, but of course it's the cumulative effect, not just what the residents may experience in the future, but by the sounds of it, what they've experienced over the past decade. So then we go to the zone uses and the discretionary uses for the zone, which would include a sport and recreational discretion. But is it the case that recent decisions in the in the Supreme Court of Tasmania, where discretionary uses are a matter for council to decide, and that there is no way of meeting the performance criteria when it comes to a discretionary use? Indeed, it is the decision of council, and therefore that this could be legitimately refused if the council felt that this particular discretionary purpose didn't augment the experience of the area, especially looking at 20.3.1 discretionary uses, that it does not compromise the function of surrounding settlements.
I'd like to just be sure that we're not conflating two issues here. The council officer's assessment on the traffic issue, as guided by our traffic engineers, is that this is appropriate. So, and that meets the acceptable solution, notwithstanding that there is obviously and clearly community concern about the use of Queechee Road. But from a technical perspective, the planning authority have been advised that Queechee Road is appropriate, and so we have adopted that into our assessment and concluded that it meets the acceptable solution for traffic generation. Now, the issue of discretionary use is one where there has been some recent evolution in how the planning scheme is interpreted, and it does broaden council's discretion when considering discretionary uses. Now, it's important that you have to consider the zone purpose statements, and that so it's not an open-ended discretion necessarily. There still has to be consideration of the things in the scheme, but it does give us a broader mandate to consider a broader range of factors than perhaps we had previously. So there is a specific standard on traffic, so I would not be sure that you could extend the use classification and the zone purpose statements to refuse an application on traffic where there is a specific standard dealing with that. But But in a sense, I want to agree with you that there is a broader discretion around the purpose statements and the considerations around discretionary use. But in our assessment, we believe that that is also satisfied.
To speak, Councillor Walker.
To speak, thank you. And thank you for those answers from our planning officer. Yeah, I do have difficulties, obviously, with the zone purpose and the discretionary use of that zone purpose. I do take your point quite clearly that traffic is assessed separately in this particular development application. That notwithstanding, it is the traffic, the intensity and the scale of the development that can compromise the function of surrounding settlements. That is the exact point that is being brought to us today. We just have to make a decision of whether we think that that intensity does or doesn't compromise the surrounding settlement. We've all probably driven along Queechee Road. It is it's a problematic road to begin with. It's hilly, it has bends, people do park on the side, there are driveways, angular and otherwise. That in itself doesn't mean that the road can't function with an extra 10, 20 car, 40 movements a day, whatever it might be. But it is that cumulative effect that is compromising the function of the surrounding settlement. It's a otherwise quiet residential area, and I think anyone who lived in a quiet residential area might be concerned when they do see traffic increasing on their road, which is otherwise a no-through road at any other time. But this business is developing. It has found different uses for this land, which is rural land that can be used for a multiple amount of purposes. The difficulty is that access, and the difficulty is that the traffic impact alone doesn't potentially measure whether that compromises the function of surrounding settlements. Of course, if there was another access, if the road could be wider, any number of things could be the case, but they're not. And having, quite regularly, I suppose I've probably been out there probably 3 or 4 times in the last year. Possibly everyone in Launceston is, on average a similar amount of times. And every time I use that road, I can see that it is problematic, let alone meeting someone with a 25-foot, 30-foot, 40-foot caravan coming in the other direction. That might, if you were living there, you might feel that impact a lot more than I would just going there 3 or 4 times a year. So I'm inclined to be sympathetic with the representatives. I'm also inclined to think that this report and the zone purpose doesn't make it clear that there is compromise of the surrounding settlements. It's been assessed as being consistent with the surrounding settlements, and I would challenge that. I accept that may not hold up if it was to be assessed by a tribunal, but I do believe this is an area where council does have the discretion in regards to the use. The use as a farm with a cafe or a restaurant may have been entirely appropriate, something that's been there a long time, but the additional uses that have been added on, and the camping is certainly one, but this is now another, and there's plenty of room there. There's no reason to think that there would be more and more additional developments. That's understandable. If you own that land, you may wish to, maximise the use, but when it does have that impact, I'm not sure where it is that we say this is now compromising the function of surrounding settlements and exercise our discretion that we have today to say that that is not an appropriate use or an extension of the use of that land.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I've got a further question, Councillor Pentridge.
I can't help but agree totally with Councillor Walker. The question that I need to ask is, and correct me if I didn't hear it right, that our planning officers indicated that they seek advice from our engineering department, and they were told by our engineering department that the road was suitable. I just can't help wondering who actually makes the decisions, the planning department or the engineering department. I'm lost because we have got a problem. So why aren't we talking about how to rectify the problem rather than blaming each other? Thank you.
So planning department, just around how the decisions and the information is sought as guidance.
So generally speaking, planning decisions synthesise a range of experts. So we might have a heritage expert or a traffic expert or a natural values expert, and the planners aren't experts in much as it pains me to say, aren't experts in everything. So we do take advice from professionals who give us that, and we adopt those and make our recommendations based on expert. We're not, planners aren't trained to be experts in every single professional discipline, but we synthesise that advice into the recommendation. So who's making the decision? Well, clearly today council is. We are building in a recommendation to you, the best advice that we can get to get you the best advice so you can make the best decision.
Well, I would have thought that the best experts were the residents.
Councillor Pentridge, I don't think we need to rebuttal there, but yeah, it's our job now to interpret the conversation from the community and to create action points if required from that. And I think there's been several action points that we would like to have explored after this. Thank you. Councillor Kai, question?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I'm reading from through the representations. There was a couple of questions asked here as well, and one was that could the council put speed bumps on the road to slow traffic down? So that would be question one.
Thank you. Can I just defer to Michael Newby, Chief Infrastructure Officer, who can potentially provide some guidance on that?
We wouldn't be in a position to commit to any sort of traffic upgrades or traffic mitigations today, but we are committed to inspecting the roadway and assessing it.
And that would include another question here by another representative that they would propose that the designated cutout parking spaces be provided along the nature strips on Queechee Road, which would offer much needed relief for the residents while also ensuring the caravans can pass through without obstruction. So that would be in the same area. I was just wondering if these have been an issue for so long, 10 years by the sound of it. I'm just wondering why it's taken so long for anything to happen. So will it be another 10 years until a solution comes in, or?
I think that based on what Michael Newby has said today, Chelsea and I will talk post this council meeting to look at what we need to do with Queechee Road, potentially given the long standing issues that have been raised today. It's certainly not an answer I can give definitively right now, but based on what Michael has said, I think we can look at that more closely after this meeting.
Councillor McMahon?
Thank you. I think we're quite lucky here in Launceston. It takes me 8 minutes to get to work. I very rarely get stuck in a traffic jam. So I think we come from a very low base when it comes to traffic issues. So I think when there is a significant increase, we really do notice it. And obviously these people are experiencing the larger vehicles, the RVs as well. I just don't feel that we can say no to this particular development because of that existing issue. I think we need to find a way to fix that issue. By refusing this is not going to fix the issue or the problem that they currently have. So I will be supporting it today, and like some of the other councillors have said, let's go back and let's look at what we can do for the people in that area with the issue that currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you very much. Again, we are facing a dilemma here. We have got, we do support developers, and this is like fair case, you know. The area is expanding. I look at over the last 20 years, how much development in that part of Launceston, you know. Very successful restaurant, caravan, farm, and you all have to go and look at the car park. It's usually full too. And they have got the right to expand more and provide more facility, health facility for the community. However, the area has been, people live there, it's nice and peaceful over the years. And now they have been experiencing an increased traffic, not just from small vehicles, but also big vehicles. And they have the right to question how far can they tolerate that. Obviously, it's causing stress. It has affected the well-being of the community because of all of this, because they don't know there is any light at the end of the tunnel. The only thing they see that it will get worse all the time, because we don't have any successful strategy how to deal with it in the future. And this is what we are, the dilemma. If we look at the proposal for the area, well, tick all the criteria. What about the surrounding area leading to that part of the world, which we cannot address as well? And this is what I am really trying hard to see how I am going to vote, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raze. Councillor Carr to speak.
Yes, I'd like to speak. I have to say that I agree with Councillor Walker, and I have to be sympathetic to the residents in that area. That area was not designed for that amount of traffic or those type of vehicles, and not just Queechee Road, but also Pinquart Road is quite dangerous as well. So coming out of Queechee Road to turn either side up the hill or down towards town, it's quite a bit of a dangerous intersection there as well, as the cars coming down Pinquart Road comes down the hill quite fast, and I'm sure they probably go a bit over the speed limit as well. So I'm going to have to say I'm not in support of this recommendation. Thank you. Until we can do something about the traffic in that area. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Any further comments around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for my fellow councillors for your thoughts. Just on Councillor Kai's comment, I come down Queechee Hill every day. I rarely have a problem with any of the large vehicles turning out of Queechee Road, forcing me to slow down or stop. They tend to, in fact, take lots of time to make sure they don't interact with the traffic coming down the hill, but it's not to say there haven't been accidents. We are here as a planning commission, and that's very important to remember. The Planning Commission, the planning rules around whether this sauna, spa and ice bath and bathroom with a maximum of 4 patrons per hour for 10 hours per day is all we're assessing today. I hear the comments, and I'm sure the council officers have heard the comments about Queechee Road, and I'm sure they are now thinking about what changes they might implement, whether they be the banning of parking, whether it be the building of off-street parking bays in the nature strip, or even speed humps, which would probably be a reluctance to do it based on the fact that putting caravans and motorhomes over speed humps isn't necessarily great for the vehicles nor the road surface itself. They are things that the experts will assess, but we are here today to determine whether we should support this development application, and I do hope that each of you support this application today because it meets the planning scheme, and the condition of the Queechee Road will be something that the council officers will investigate and look for solutions regardless of our decision today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All councillors in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. So council now no longer sits as planning authority as we move into agenda item number 12, which is announcements by the Mayor, which are published as a part of this agenda. So moving forward through to 13, we've got councillor reports. 13.1, conference report. Councillor Harris, the 2024 Rail Trails Conference, 18 to 19 of October, with a recommendation to receive the report. I'm going to move by Councillor Harris. Somebody to second. Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and thank you to my fellow councillors for sending me to the Rail Trail Expo. That's why I had to leave the last meeting a little early, was to get there in time for the day. The report was written, I'm a little surprised to see it in today's amendment. It was written for my fellow councillors, but nevertheless it contains lots of great information, and I think I came away from the Rail Trail Conference convinced that Launceston has two great opportunities in front of it. One of it is the development of the existing rail trail that runs from Inveresk through to Rochalee, that it already has complete control over, with a small section through the Launceston Racing Club just off Remount Road to be addressed. The missing link, as it is known. I see that if we fix that in the first 12 months of where we are, the Dorset Council have control of the rail trail from Scottsdale down to Lilydale Falls. And it's clear to me that we talk about tourist icons, that the Lilydale to Scottsdale rail trail, with proper promotion and marketing, can become one of the top 5 must-visit attractions in Launceston. So I will leave it at that, leave it for others to read the report, but I do thank you for sending me. I think it has opened my eyes to how rail trails need to be promoted and thought about as an end-to-end experience rather than build it and they will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and you may recall I was one who voted against Councillor Harris attending that rail trail conference, but nonetheless I do appreciate the report that he has delivered. Very concise, very informative. Unfortunate that it's an issue that is very divisive in our community at the moment. We do have one prime railway line from Launceston to Scottsdale and beyond that has been in contention for probably nearly a decade now in terms of Dorset Council wishing to rip up the lines and convert that into a rail trail. We've all seen the success of rail trails. We've also all seen the success of railways and indeed the rejuvenation of railways around the world, not just in Australia, but around the world. Countries are realising that major public corridors, transport corridors, democratise the accessibility to transport across the world, where people, regardless of wealth, of leisure time, of age, can access reliable transport. So whilst rail trails are in their right place extremely popular, they are not for everyone. And certainly railways are something that has been part of a bygone era in Tasmania. But as I say, many people are looking towards rejuvenating the railway. And while this remains a contentious issue, I won't be supporting council having an opinion on one side or the other, but that we should listen to both sides and hopefully find a solution, as I've always said, where both can be accommodated. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments around the report? Anything further to close, Councillor Harris?
No.
Cool. Okay, putting it to the table. All those in accepting the report, that's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 13.2, do we have any further councillor reports? Councillor Kai, then Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Well, yesterday, along with Mayor Garwood and Councillor Harris, I attended the Launceston Work Ready program morning tea held here at the Town Hall. It was an honour to be part of the award presentation for the exceptional students who are in their final semester of the Master of Professional Accounting degree. The event was attended by the graduating students, their host employers, and selected teaching staffs involved in the program. It was a great program that prepares international students for the next stage of their life, from university to the workforce. So great job and congratulations again to all the international students on the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Councillor Harris?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the only other thing I want to mention that we all participated in fact, was our strategic planning workshop last Thursday and Friday. I found it a great couple of days where we had the opportunity to work together as a team of what our future vision will look like for Launceston in 2034-35, because if you don't know where you're going, then you will just wander all over the place. And having a strategic plan that sets out clearly what our aims as a council are, is something that helps keep councils on track, and it's something that I think this council has needed for some time, and I look forward to when we have the opportunity to bring it back early in the new year so we can share it with our ratepayers here in Launceston. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Professor Raze.
On the 18th of October, I attended the opening of the $97 million university building called The Shed, which is the new home for health, medicine and science, education and research for the university. It will also support the new allied health courses in physiotherapy, speech pathology and occupational therapy. But I'll tell you what, it's the most impressive building I have seen. And I was so impressed with the design. And it reflects actually all the railway the history of the city of Launceston, which goes back to the 19th century. But what I hope, that this will transform the community to value the power of education and help especially people who are disadvantaged background. I also hope it will inspire our young generation to pursue education. When Tasmanian students, they have got the highest or the lowest attainment rate to reach year 12. So I hope it will have a positive impact in the community. I also attended on the same day the meeting to reveal the concept design for the mental health precinct, which is about $90 million. The city desperately wants a facility like this. As we know, the mental health the disorders are reaching epidemic proportion. 20% of Australians are affected, but most importantly, the young generation, that nearly 1 in 3 of them will have some mental health problem. And this is what will transpire, not only to care for our patients, but hopefully we will invest also in attracting people who will come and stay here. And I think that's very important for the future of Tasmania. On Saturday night, on 19th of October, I also attended the Scriptural Union Tasmanian fundraising dinner, which works alongside churches and community to support children and young adults and their families by attending camps. And also, it was great to hear some of young generation giving testimony about their faith, how it supported them. But I also realized about a third of younger generation between 15 and 25, they started to get more interested in spirituality. And I think it's a subject which we have neglected over the last 20 to 30 years. Well, on Sunday, the 20th of October, also, I attended Let's Fly the Kites. And it was so great to see so many young and old were enjoying the flying a kite, which was a celebration of both the Children Week and Senior Week, which were just next after each other. And this reflected on about social connectedness. This is what our actually community needs more of. I just also mentioned, like the night before in the Scripture Union dinner, we got all the people together and we were dancing. But what actually surprised me, one of them came to me and said, "Thank you for getting us in dance." And I thought, this is what social connected is. This is what Australia used to be in the 60s and 70s. And we need more festivity like that to connect not just the young and old, but all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Professor Raze. Further community reports? Okay, we'll move through the agenda then. At 14, we have questions by councillors. At 14.1, we have no councillor questions identified as a part of this agenda, but we have now councillors' questions without notice. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of questions that I'd like to raise. They are somewhat interrelated. Can you confirm that the Tasmanian landfill levy rate that was established in 2022 to reduce the volume and amount of material sent to landfill and to encourage more recycling was established? Can you confirm that the ratepayer who takes a trailer load of just green waste to the council's waste recovery centre will pay the state landfill levy of $44.88 a tonne as a component of their tip entrance fee based on the weight of the green waste? My second one, does the council use a large mobile mulcher or similar machine, mulcher I should say, not a muncher, mulcher, a similar machine to break down the green waste that is separated and deposited at the Launceston Waste Recovery Centre into a form of mulch that it uses on its own council-maintained gardens? Or does some of this mulch go to the compost that council uses on its own garden and sells by wholesale truckload? Or does council simply use what is collected in the curbside FOGO bins for the making of the compost? And my third question is, can council consider supplying each Launceston ratepayer with 2 free green waste only tip vouchers each year, in addition to the current 2 free general tip vouchers, to encourage more green waste to be separated out and not commingled with other rubbish, and so ended up being directed to the walking floor to then be buried in landfill? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Team Leader Sustainability Attard through General Manager Chelsea.
All right, thanks for the questions. To the first one about the landfill levy being introduced in 2022, yes, it was introduced then through state legislation. The idea was to drive more resource recovery, recycling. I guess it's an economic instrument to send to people, or a message that there's better ways to do things. A lot of that money so far has gone into setting up and enabling that legislation, really. There's been money that has gone to major infrastructure projects, also the education and awareness piece as well. The annual report from the Waste and Resource Recovery Board is been out for the last 2 years, and a quick glimpse at that today. They're getting in around $7 million, of which they've spent about 3.7 in that last financial year. So that's why it was established. We've seen a lot of emphasis on data in the first place because they need to understand what they're dealing with. So that's where a lot of money's gone. To the second part of the question in relation to are residents charged that full landfill levy when they take a green waste load into our waste centre? Currently they are, because we have challenges with being able to distinguish between what is a clean load and what is a dirty load. We are very mindful of it. We've started to grab our own data based on that. So when you go out to the waste centre, you're asked to go to a section C or D, clean being C for clean, D for dirty. And so we're trying to explore how we might be able to incentivise people to come in with clean green waste. I think there's a big educational component that goes along with that, and probably looking at some of our processes as well. So when we do go up there at the moment, you go to either the clean or the dirty, but there's also a big bin there for people to put in stuff that might be not considered green waste or just landfill. On top of thinking about that pricing structure, because we can't really determine now because they're mixed loads at the moment, we're also looking at feasibility and a business case for a construction, well, a diversion facility essentially, that would also intercept some of that green waste that is currently going into our bigger bins and also on our walking floor. So that will be a development. We're also putting in a sawtooth, an extra sawtooth bay. Now, what that's for is so when they're doing mulching and things like that, we often have to shut that down, the green waste, so we lose that opportunity when that green waste goes through. But when we shut that down now, we can have another bin, big 30-metre bin, dedicated just to that and other recycling as well. As far, I think I'm up to number 3. So number 3, can council consider a voucher system? I think council can certainly explore that. Currently, we have 1 voucher a year. It's a year. I see that you had 2 in the questions. We have 1 a year, which takes you up to about 3 tonnes that can come in. That can be green waste, that can be general. So I think it's just it's a matter for the council to consider that. We have our concessional waste policy coming up for review at the moment. We're working on it currently. So potentially there could be an opportunity to have a workshop, and we can talk right through that. As the waste team, we can price all that out, see what that looks like. Yeah, and go forward from there.
Probably any questions about the mulch and compost?
Oh yes, okay, yes, I did miss that, sorry. The mulch that does come in that's clean is around 612 tonnes per year. Now that does get mulched up by an external. They won the tender back in September this year. Costs around $90,000 a year. And that goes onto our organics processing. So that's included along with the food waste and general waste we get in our FOGO bins, and along with some of the commercial inputs that we've been able to attract, like Cripps Bakery and also like LGH hospitals. So it is included and goes through and makes a final product.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed with some consternation that Natural Resource and Environment Management have decided to enforce no camping requirements at Kings Bridge, Kings Wharf in Inverresc, which will obviously have an impact on people who have camped there on a regular basis. Did the state government or its departments notify council of its intention to enforce that?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. General Manager Ogula.
Thank you very much. I wasn't made aware of the signage going up at all, and I don't believe we were given any notification that it was happening. I think it is Crown land, so the state government has rights to do and erect whatever signage they feel appropriate for that area.
No, and look, it certainly is Crown land, and they're within the rights to do that. But it would seem to fly in the face of existing council policy, which is to hopefully alleviate people's troubles by allowing them to stay in an area as long as they're not causing harm to themselves or others. Similarly, has the council had any communication with the state government since decisions regarding the Dutch elm tree in York Park, as well as a decision around a potential truck pullover area in South Launceston came to council? Has there been any further discussion with state government departments in regards to those ongoing issues?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, for your question. I'll have to take the parking bay one on notice. So I'm happy to liaise with the planning team as to what conversations may have been had. In relation to the Stadiums Tasmania, in relation to the tree, you'll be aware that Council did receive a presentation at workshop from Infrastructure Tasmania and Stadiums Tasmania just recently, which outlined their proposal and their planning application as proposed to be submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. On the public questions on notice, we had a Daisy Barnett send in a question, and that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Daisy, for doing that. And the responses are excellent. I just want a bit more clarification, if I can, on the toddler pool. We know that it's getting a new filtration system. Doesn't say anything there about the pool resurfacing for the toddler pool. The CEO and I were down in Lilydale this week, and it all looks amazing. The main pool is looking very good, and everything is fixed, ready to go for December the 1st. But I did sort of run my hand across that. The other pool area is really, really rough, and the idea I thought was happening was that toddler pool is getting a resurfacing so that young kids don't, graze themselves as they swim. So I'm just wanting for a bit of clarification on that.
Thank you very much for the question. I actually don't have an answer for you, and if I could take it on notice and get a response to you, that would be appreciated.
No worries at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions without notice, councillors? Okay, we'll move forward. We have no notices of motions or committee reports that have been identified as a part of this agenda, so we'll move to 17. At 17.1, which is Community Place and Network, we've got the Community Grants Round, 24 to 25. With the recommendation coming in that council approves the following community grant program application to receive the recommended grant amounts and determine those not to be funded. Noting that Councillor Palmer has a declaration of interest around the neighbourhood house. We do them in 2 blocks, or we want to do them in one, noting that, yeah, okay. We'll do them all in one. To move the recommendation, Councillor McMahon, a seconder. Councillor Kai, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk too much about them. You can see all of the applications there in front of you. And as you can see, we were able to assist quite a few of the applications with a broad range of events that engage and benefit our community, from cancer wellbeing, education programs, music, trauma care skills, dance programs, programs to connect dads, food and cooking programs, just to name a few. And I would encourage us to approve the community grant applications to receive the recommended grants as you see in front of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Kai, nothing further as a second. Any comments around the table? Anything further to close? No? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Fantastic. Just one thing to note, this money that doesn't get spent, let's look where that goes to, if it rolls over or not. Okay, at 17.2, we have the Community Pantry Initiative. Now, do we have any public speakers to this before we get to the recommendation? There being none, we'll move forward. So we've got the recommendation that council considers the report on the Community Pantry Initiative, and 2, endorses the proposed next steps for the installation of a pantry at the corner of Frederick Street and Charles Street next to Princess Square. It's been moved by Councillor Dawkins. Seconded, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. This was a really interesting exercise for council. It was nimble in its activity because we had something pop up that had some risk associated with it, let's just say that, and we could see there was a community need. So for 2 months, we had a look and saw, well, can we use the Civic Square because it's near us and it's near a whole lot of other facilities, and we thought this is a good place for it's wide and open and safe. Let's see if people will come and use our community pantry with the community donations. But this report investigated that people perhaps were a little reluctant to come. Maybe there were parking issues, wasn't visible enough, maybe wasn't visible to the people it needed to be visible to. So we're now recommending that we move forward with Charles Street and Frederick, a very visible spot just outside Princess Square, going back to where the initial community pantry was. So I think it will be advantageous for us to keep moving on these kinds of ideas. It's a way for community to support community, for us to understand that we know, even though inflation has dipped slightly, it's still going to be really tough for a lot of people to be able to access the food that they need. I thought it was interesting that sanitary requirements, they weren't really high on the list. I would have thought perhaps that this was one of those issues that they do, we understand that they are in some ways considered luxurious, but of course they're not. No. But people seem to be able to manage, unless it's a lot of people identifying as men using it who don't need those kind of requirements. But either way, we've got started now. Let's hope there's a time in the future where we do not need this kind of community activity, but for now we do, and let's keep going.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. Yes, it was great to see that we made the attempt and popped the trial in Civic Square, but I guess after review it probably wasn't the best place, not overly visible or accessible to those who were probably needing it. And I would hope that this next iteration we really put those vulnerable people in our community at the forefront of any decisions and outcomes, and I would probably like to see maybe those people included in some of the conversations so that we can really find out what their needs are. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Harris.
Just a question. We're going to put this on the corner of Frederick and Charles Street. Which corner? Are we going to put it that the box, I assume it's like a box, will face the old service station site, so therefore be on the Frederick Street front, or will it be on the Charles Street side facing Morton House?
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you. It is going to be on the corner facing the old petrol station. So where that there's a traffic signals box there. So I've walked up there and had a look at the most suitable location, and that seems like the most visible, and from a heritage perspective as well, the most suitable location. So in working with the men's shed, I think we'll get a really beautiful design that's going to look much better than our very quick and dirty pantry that we put into Civic Square, and it's great to have that partnership with them too.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, a couple of questions, if I may. And one was going to be on the design, because we probably have seen the one in Civic Square, and it's maybe somewhat robust in terms of weather. It's probably not robust in terms of its strength. So that was the one question. And also that it's anticipated that this would at some point be handed over to a community group. I don't know if anyone can explain the process there and how that would take place, that selection.
Thank you very much for your question. I think with the community groups, we'll be looking to put out an expression of interest for people to come to us with criteria. We'd obviously need to make sure they had insurances and met other requirements to make sure that they could operate. I think we talked in the report about also making sure that we have a group that can continue on for as long as possible. We don't want to put a community group in there and set them up for failure. So I think we'd have a fairly robust criteria to make sure that whichever community group we worked with were capable of seeing it through for the medium to long term. And I think we would need that with Civic Square because it is quite a distance from council, so a partnership with a community group would be ideal.
Thank you. Look, I was one that did not discourage a self-appointed community group taking this initiative in that area a few months ago. We do like to try and see ourselves as agile and nimble when it comes to various initiatives and things like that. Sometimes it probably does take prompting from the community for us to, see that there may be another way to do things. And so I do commend the council staff in their response to this situation, as well as the community who did also see a need. And sometimes when these things are done by community, of course they're not done to the letter of the law, and of course that no permission has been sought, but on the other side, they seem to garner organic support from the community and a sense of protection from the community and support. There, immediately when this initiative first started, there were businesses and individuals who stepped out in support of it. It's different when the council does it, so I'm glad to hear that we would be looking towards working with a community group in the long term. I would also like to think that this is just the beginning, and that the more of these that there are, probably the less focus there will be upon them, and that they will just become as ubiquitous as the pillbox that you're going to put it next to, perhaps, so that it's no longer a contentious issue or particularly an issue of conversation. It's just an accepted part of what we do as a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. A question, Councillor Kai.
Yes. I think we all did receive an email this morning at 11:20. I'm not sure if anyone's read it yet. It's actually a petition for, hold on, in light of the news that council will today be Yes. So how does that work? Because I've noticed that number 9 we had petition, but you said there was no petitions. And then, right, so could you explain as to maybe why this petition that we received at 11:20 couldn't be on today's agenda?
Agenda items are closed. Agenda items closed Wednesday afternoons.
Right.
There's a process, and it seems that these people don't want to abide by that process.
Right, okay. So just to clarify for people hearing, it couldn't be on today's agenda for number 9 as petition because the email didn't come in till 11:20 this morning, which was too late. Is that correct? Right. Pardon? Right, okay. So just in case, the community complained that we didn't put their petition on today's meeting is the process. Right, thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments? Anything to close? Councillor Dawkins? No, that's okay. That's okay. Cool. Okay. Putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 17.3, we have the St Leonard's Structural Plan update, with the recommendation that council notes the contents of the report, providing an update on the progress towards developing a structural plan and infrastructural funding framework for St Leonard's Waverley growth area. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris is moving. A seconder. Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is simply a recommendation for us to receive the report on an update on the structure plan and infrastructure funding framework for the St Leonard's and Waverley growth area. This is an important part for the future of that part of our city. I do note on their timelines that they are progressing well with the community engagement, having completed their initial project inception and background review, with a few more parts to go, which will take us up to probably the start of next year, which will be good for us to get some information back from them on this. It is a review being undertaken by Mesh, and I look forward to seeing the final report. I am interested to see that they seem to have done some community consultation, but I personally wasn't aware of that, and I'm not sure how many other people out there in the community were aware that they were undertaking community consultation, and it doesn't say where that was done. But other than that, happy for us to receive this report today.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton, anything around the table? Any comments? Nothing to close, Councillor Harris? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those of accepting the report, which is all councillors present, the motion is carried. 17.4, Mobile Food Vendor Policy Review. With the recommendation that council approves renaming the mobile vendors operating on public roads policy to mobile food vending policy, and amends and approves the fees as detailed in the agenda for the financial year ending 30th of June. Those being from the previous model, $180 for a day licence to $50. The 6-month licence from $1,193 down to $300, and the 12-month licence from $2,376 down to $550. Somebody to move. Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First and foremost, there was a small part of me that was nearly going to call a conflict of interest on this. And then I properly read it, and obviously this is pertaining to a particular type, a particular set of food vans. And they have clearly become a pretty important part of the food culture here in Launceston. I do have a couple of questions, but just probably a good time to get to that now. But yeah, I do want to preface, I'm absolutely all for the food vans, it's fantastic. But just a couple of questions. The booking system, is that booking system in place at the moment, or are we going to actually implement that? Is that correct?
The booking system will be available from the new year, so it's currently not available, but it will be in place.
And then second, what was the reasoning behind lowering the price of the licence?
I think in the report it goes to show that the price of mobile food vendor permits in Launceston are extremely high compared to other cities or towns in Tasmania. So Hobart has probably got an equally high price for food permits, but that's for Salamanca Place in particular, which is obviously a high demand area, and they're obviously trying to use pricing to get particular vendors in there. In order to encourage, competition and interest in mobile food trading, I think we need to lower the price to actually make it more accessible, because it is a high cost to set up a food van. You've got food permits, all the food compliance side of things as well. And it's really about trying to make Launceston as vibrant as possible with a permit that is commensurate with that.
Perfect, and that does all make sense. And just one third question. Do they pay a food licence and they do? Yeah.
So how it works in Tasmania under the Food Act, you have to get if you're bricks and mortar business, you need to have a food business registration. If you are a vendor trading or moving around the state, either in a tent or in a van, you need to have a statewide registration. So we issue those every year. So people apply to us and they have to pay for a statewide food registration. And then on top of that, they would then need to pay for this permit.
Okay.
So they're two different acts, I guess. It's the Food Act that requires the statewide permit, and then this is our own fee for access to our land, if that makes sense.
Perfect. All sounds fantastic. And yeah, obviously, and the council has, and the policy does take into consideration bricks and mortar businesses. I will just say these food vans do obviously operate in the exact same industry that bricks and mortar operate in, and bricks and mortar, the cost of running an exhaust flue is more than our current food van price. When you take on rent and cleaning your own toilets and all the rest of it, it is a competitive environment. But with all that said, the positives far outweigh the negatives. It's just a small little part to that argument I thought I should put forward. But I'm all for it, and we'll be accepting this today. Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also stand to support this. I think it's fair that, and we've seen the decline in food vans that were very popular up on High Street a number of years ago. And I think perhaps the pricing, looking at the cost of the fees, would have had something to do with the ability of those people to turn a profit. And I do think it adds to our dining options, and I think it grows the pie rather than cutting each other's lunch. The other good thing is I like to see that it is inclusive of other locations, that there probably aren't many food options. And I look at this one at the St Leonard's Recreation Ground as an example. There really is only the hotel and a small takeaway, but obviously an opportunity for someone to perhaps take burritos or Thai food or something down to that location and offer a different experience to what's currently being provided. So I do congratulate the officers for working on this, and I'm happy to support it here today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. A question, Councillor Dawkins?
Thank you. Am I right in thinking that when more food vans came onto private property, that we saw less licences handed out for, say, High Street and those kind of areas? So we saw a natural sort of shift away from public space, onto those little kind of truck parks.
I might defer to Marcus Grantham here. I know he undertook a survey with his team, and I think it'd be really, he'd have some useful intel to share on that. Oh, Marilyn Burns, sorry, forgive me.
Is it on? Yep. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because we've noticed that we've gone down from 4 vendors when we started writing this policy down to basically only 2 registered vendors, because they basically would just need a discretionary planning application to do it on private-owned land. So people have just gone, well, it's so much cheaper and easier to just go onto private land, and you get extra, like you can get storage and water and power and stuff. So it's a no-brainer that they've moved.
And then I suppose from a council perspective, are we happy with that? Because it seemed to me that there was a great kind of burgeoning culture around High Street. We all saw it, and I know that it perhaps grew a little bit too much at one point, and it wasn't really manageable, and there were issues around toilet facilities and those sorts of things. But it does feel, when we talk about city heart and growing community and all these kinds of things, that it was a lost opportunity. My question is, would we consider revisiting that in order, apart from this process, in order to be able to try and reclaim some of this food van space?
Sorry, can I just clarify, revisiting?
Allowing something like that to sort of slip away. We had an opportunity where we could have invested and done something to increase that participation, but instead we asked to stop. We did the same at Royal Park, I think. So I think there are more opportunities to use council space for community activity like this. Would we consider a policy toward that direction?
I don't see why we couldn't. I mean, the intention of this is really to, again, reinvigorate that sector. We talk about that lots of food vendors want to go onto council land to parks like Riverbend and activate those spaces, which, again, currently we can't permit them to go there. So I think that there is absolutely an opportunity to look at how we can broaden that as part of a broader activation work that we do in the placemaking team.
Great. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. So I believe that food vans definitely play an important part in a vibrant food scene and an offering of a diversity in options. Probably following on from what Alex said, I'm not sure if you can answer this question for me now, but what kind of fees do we charge, like a bricks and mortar who has outside dining? What sort of fees do we charge for the spaces that they hire?
As in like a permit for the footpath, are you talking? I don't have the answer to that. I think Nathan Williams is looking that up right now. Oh, Erica? Erica Deegan from Infrastructure can provide an answer.
Erica Deegan, Managed Infrastructure Engineering. I can give one very specific example. So I know of one business in the CBD that operates on George Street, and they have outdoor dining that was 2 tables, and that was $700-ish. Nathan's looking up, it's a square meterage rate for occupation of space in the...
So that's $700 a year?
Yes, for a year. Nathan might have the square metre rate.
So the published fees and charges list a number of outdoor dining fees. So there is the central CBD, which per square metre is $90. The outer CBD is $54 per square metre. Other minor areas, $26 per square metre. And in district centres, such as shopping districts like Kings Meadows, Mowbray, Newstead and Invermay, it is $50 per square metre.
Thank you very much. I know, speaking to a few businesses around the city, some of them have asked to reduce theirs back because they can't actually afford to pay for that anymore. And there are businesses who no longer actually use it at all. So I would probably like to see that if we're going to be looking at reducing fees and rates for food vans, that we try and encourage some vibrancy back into the city as well, and potentially look at reducing rates for the outdoor dining as well, if that could be a consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly take that on notice.
Further comments around the table? Councillor Walker?
I'll have a go. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just think that it's great that you've put some thought into this, the modelling here in terms of the cost. We have seen the change. It's surprising to learn that we were charging the same price as someone who's going to Salamanca Market with, quite a few thousand people passing through the passing the van. Of course, a lot more thought has to go into it. I remember a few years ago we were talking about different precincts around Launceston where we would encourage food vans to congregate from one end of the municipality to the other. Not sure what's happened to that, but quite often with these things, you do let the market decide, and the market will determine that. We do have those provisions for it's been the age-old issue of bricks and mortar versus mobile vans, but it's also just the changing nature of our society. We don't burn whale blubber anymore when it comes to lighting the room, and we don't all go to a restaurant when we get dinner. That's just the way that it is. You can have a mobile food van that supplies one market, and somewhere you sit down that supplies another market. It's just the changing nature of society, and that's okay as long as there are provisions for all, I suppose. And I don't think we should be putting the disincentive for people to operate food vans, but certainly we do need to look at the on-street dining as a result of this. We need to look at other levers that we can pull one way or another. Essentially, we all want to see the businesses thrive and not for one to suffer at the behest of another. Thank you for the work.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments? Anything to close?
Nothing, just I think all of this probably would have naturally come up if we had a chance to workshop this item. It doesn't matter that we didn't, it's obviously all come up now. Let's see how it goes. I don't think anyone's against the changes today. If we look at it again in 12 months, I would really love it if we did pay some particular attention. I didn't even know how much it was per square metre to hire stuff in the mall. That's obviously, again, a little bit skewed towards the food vans there if you look at the maths. But that's all right. We can deal with that later, and let's move on now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 18, we have our Creative Arts and Cultural Services Network, which is 18.1, with the QVMag annual report. The recommendation is that Council receives and adopts the Queen Victoria Museum and Art Gallery annual report for 23-24 and submits to the Minister for the Arts of the Tasmanian State Government to be laid before Parliament, which is a requirement. Somebody to move. Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Dawkins. A seconder, Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you, and thank you to Shane Fitzgerald for the passionate rendition of this annual report today. It always so heartwarming to be able to hear how a person put into the right position in this organisation is able to take it. We can see it built on year, and we can start to see some of the fruition of some of those early actions really come into play now. So we've got more living artists engaged. We've got more people coming to specific exhibitions, though I know in previous years we have had a higher single number, but that's because of very specific offerings. It's the living practitioners that really interest me in an institution that has generally been regarded as an archive. So to be able to engage in that way and to have outreach, that is absolutely brilliant, because we've stood there and we've generally waited for someone to come through the door and tried to usher them to something that might be of interest. We can now, it's 1.5 million objects that we're able to display and to reach out to people and ask them to engage with. We know that Tasmania has an incredible archive. In general, we have been really, really good at keeping things, and we've been really good at talking about who's been in our history when it comes to post-colonialism. Perhaps times before that we haven't been so good. And I know that this institution is one that recognises that and wants to move forward into a place where we can start to make amends for that and really engage with our local Palawam Pakna community to ensure that everybody gets a voice. So again, really impressed, and really hope anyone listening or watching make sure that they engage with these incredible institutions. And thank you to all the team and all the volunteers again.
Thanks, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Harris.
Yes, just briefly, thank you to General Manager Shane for his report today. 153,000 visitors through QVMag, 106,000 of those from within Tasmania, another 37,000 from within mainland Australia, and 11,000 international visitors. As we all know, Lonely Planet said we're the fourth most must-visit region in the world, and the QVMag rates third on their list after the Gorge and the Tamar Valley. So congratulations to Shane and his staff. I think this is a fantastic report, and I do recommend it to anyone who's interested in reading more. I will leave you with one small item that I found most stunning, and that was that there was 3.7 million records downloaded from the Atlas of Living Australia from the QVMag services. So that is just an indication of how it plays its role, not only in our local community, but in fact the research community around the world. Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and thank you for this report. As time goes on, the auditing is being done, collections are being catalogued. It's partially that response to the digitising of the world. It means the accessibility for our huge catalogue, it becomes more and more important, and more access means more impact that our collection has, not just in Tasmania but across Australia and increasingly around the world. That the collection and the objects are in so many ways unique, just as Tasmania is unique in so many ways, and that is what I see, that the leverage that is being made here with the collection that we have. For so long, growing up in Launceston, you took it for granted in a way, just as we take most things in Tasmania for granted in a way, and it takes someone who comes from outside to look at that sometimes and see what we have in our own hands. And I do believe there's an element of that at play here, especially when the results come in, and they are in this report. And I would encourage anyone listening or watching today to look at the report. the annual report and see that that is where there is a huge amount of growth occurring. I know it was only just today that I was talking to the General Manager, Shane Fitzgerald, about the museum's growing role too when it comes to being able to provide adjunct services that are in the long-term plan for QVMAG. And so there's plenty of exciting things on the horizon when it comes to what our cultural services will be able to provide for locals as well as for visitors. But in the meantime, that needs to be founded in the base that you will find in this annual report, which is that consistent increase in numbers of users and visitors, but also the consistent increase in cataloguing and auditing within the collection, which gives that basis from which research can be done, and people can do that from distance as well now too. So our participation and our interaction with institutions near and far should increase as a result. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further comments around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Dawkins? Okay. Accepting the report, putting it to the table. All those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried. Thank you. At 18.2, we have the MGABs, the Museum Governance Advisory Board Terms of Reference. Recommendation is that Council approves the Museum Governance Advisory Board Terms of Reference as published. Somebody to move? Councillor Britton? Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Britton, anything to say?
Not too much, just thanks for giving us the update the other day at workshop. This is a fairly standard thing, I think, so fantastic, thank you.
Excellent. Anything, Councillor Pentridge? No. Anything around the table? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Thank you. At 19, we have Infrastructure and Assets Network. 19.1, request to waive road occupation fee, Max Jago Sun Smart Light Show. Any public speakers to this one? Just double checking. Okay. The recommendation is that Council notes the proposal by Max Jago to close and occupy Allenvale Road, Newnham, to hold the Sun Smart Light Show event on the 24th of December 2020. That says 2023. 2024. We'll amend that one before somebody moves it. 24 December 2024, and agrees to remit 100% of the fees associated with the occupation of the road in the amount of $1,142.87. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is Christmas Eve, lights out at Newnham. It's been a bit contentious over the past year, but we now seem to be getting things in the right order. We are looking at this in advance of the day and not in the last week. And we are simply here to allow him to have his display of Christmas lights on the 24th of December, shutting off part of the road on Allenvale Road. And obviously in conjunction with our staff, they must be happy with that. But also we need to waive the occupation fee, which totals just over $1,100. And I do think that it gives much more than $1,100 worth of value to particularly smaller children, but even those of us who are still young at heart do love to see some good Christmas lights. So happy to support this decision or this recommendation here today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge.
I have to agree. I think the community benefit and the joy that brings everybody far exceeds the little bit of money. I just hope that leading into 2025, the same generosity from this council continues and we start caring a little bit more for our community.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Britton.
Thank you. Look, I think in previous years it's always been a bone of contention, obviously, over whether or not we can close the road or not. If it has indeed been deemed that we can close the road, I don't think we should chase anybody up for the $1,100. Oh, I don't think $1,100 is going to do much to alleviate any of the problems that may come from closing the road anyway. So, in the Christmas spirit.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, just to speak briefly, I didn't realise that, it's obviously not a decision of this table that the road closure application was approved. It was something that obviously council staff were comfortable with, and just to, to be aware that wasn't always the case, that we were comfortable with that road closure. It does have an impact, and there will be people out there. We can only imagine how that is being managed. But this is an application for the waiving of the fees. My only question there, I suppose, is, it's a question around the precedent we set, I suppose, in terms of that, there seems to be a proliferation of Christmas lights. I'm no Scrooge, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, this... We will be setting a precedent, I imagine, by not just allowing the road closure but waiving the fees. There is an increase in this type of activity, whether it be for one celebration or another. Let's not single out Christmas. It could be Halloween's very, topical at the moment. It could be another type of festival. Look, you travel around the world and people celebrate all sorts of things, and why shouldn't they? I'm just saying, have we set a precedent in waiving the fees?
Is that a question, Councillor Walker?
It's the question.
Yeah. So just around the policy and how it was created to address these issues.
So the policy was created that was approved at council meeting maybe a month ago, did talk about how the different events that we would support generically, because this event is deemed a for-profit event. The decision was made by council at that time that they would have to apply to waive the fees. You are completely right. This may set a precedent. That's a decision for council to make if they're supportive of these sorts of things. Indication in the past has been that you are supportive of waiving this fee, which is why we brought this recommendation to the council.
Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you very much. Well, Councillor Walker, you have to remember that Christmas is about getting the community together. And historically, Launceston were priding itself with so many people, having so many Christmas decoration all over Launceston, but there has been decline lately. Many people couldn't afford even having them. But here we have to support event like this, and somebody who, put time and effort and experience to make so many people, young and old, coming to enjoy the spirit of Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Professor Raze. Any further comments around the table? Anything further to... So it'd have to be a question.
Councillor Walker's correct. I hope it does become contagious and we do more of it.
Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
No, thank you for that. I just would have a question. Do we know if it is a plan to have an entry fee? Do we know the charity or otherwise that the entry fee is going to?
I understand that he has spoken to our events team around and made note that he is charging an entry fee. There may have been conversations around that, and we can take that on notice. I'm not sure if anyone has the answer on that quite clearly, but my understanding is that it is his intention to donate some of the entry fee towards a charity, but I don't have the clarity on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering that question. I still will support the motion on this, and will be interested to see the answer of what he is going to do with his entry fee as such. Thank you.
Great. Okay, putting it to the table. All those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 19.2, we've got the Flood Mitigation Strategy Scoping Study. Recommendation is... Oh, no speakers? Recommendation is that the council endorse the Flood Mitigation Strategy Scoping Strategy and includes the required additional resourcing in the draft 25-26 financial year budget. I've got pre-made the assumption, Councillor Britton to move. Somebody to second. I've got Councillor Harris to second. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I think we all know Launceston has had a long history of a flood problem. All I don't want to do is sit up here and fearmonger, so I'm not going to read some of the stuff I've done here. But last year, a comprehensive scenario brought together key stakeholders across Launceston and the state in collaboration with state and federal governments to assess the risk associated with a 1 in 500 year flood. The findings were clear: such an event would cripple Launceston, initiating a decade of recovery while exacting significant social and economic cost on the city. Rising insurance premiums and evolving building and planning regulations are already shaping our community's future. Australia has seen an increase in devastating fires and floods in recent years, highlighting our need for work in this area even more. This report details and will continue to explore the strategic options available for flood mitigation. Amongst these are large-scale infrastructure solutions, each weighed against its economical, environmental and social implications, ultimately to present a strategy that positions Launceston in a position to effectively face and potentially even defend against future flood risks. Just a special recognition or thank you to Shane and Erica, who have worked with Pitt and Sherry. I'm sure there's actually plenty more people who have worked with Pitt and Sherry. I don't know, I'm sorry. Who've worked on the report, and as well of all of the data and investment that's gone into this to date. In closing, there is something I would like to do, and I've never done this, so I'm probably going to get this wrong. Look, it was a good day to own an umbrella shop in Spain recently. In the last 48 hours, they've had the worst flooding they've had in 30 years. We've had the worst fires and the worst floods we've had down the eastern seaboard in the last 5 or 6 years. All over the world, if you turn on the reports, these natural disasters are happening more and more and more. What I would like to change, and what I don't really understand is in here, is the required additional resourcing in the draft 25-26 financial year. If I need to amend it or move it, I'm not sure how to do this. I'll look for guidance, but I'd like to see it, or this report adopted and work to begin as soon as possible, if I can do that.
CEO, around amending the time frame.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Britton, for your question. From a technical point of view, I'll be guided by the infrastructure team, but I can certainly talk from a budgetary point of view. You can, or the council can achieve just about anything it wishes to achieve, so long as it resources it accordingly. At this point in time, we don't have the budget for it. So therefore, if you're looking to accelerate it into this financial year, I would encourage you to talk with our finance people, or we can do that for you, around the next budget amendment, which is not too far away, budget review, sorry, and we can incorporate something in there to start the project.
That would be good. Does the outcome of the motion today dictate whether or not we can do that at the next budget amendment? No?
We still could, yes, absolutely. This resolution here would include definitely for the 25-26 financial year budget, which would still need to be adopted by council anyway. We would treat the budget review separately, which we can work with our Chief Financial Officer to make some degree of inclusion.
Not a problem. We'll do that then. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Britton for moving this motion. Happy to support it. I think the flood mitigation strategy is something that is critical for this city, although it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen next year, it may not even happen in the next decade. However, when it does happen, everyone will say, well, why didn't council do something? And that is why it's important that we do it. I just cannot stop looking at the photo on the attachment of the flood mitigation strategy study document that has the Kalamaloka, Tamar River, southeast flooding into there. The water's up to the retaining wall or the redirection wall in Royal Park, and to think just what the volume of water that is flooding down there at that time. And it is something that thankfully in the city, because of the southeast and its way that the water gets to Launceston, we will have some notice. However, this is long-term planning for what the city has to do, and if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So I don't intend to plan to fail, so we must support this today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Further comments around the table? Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I do rise to echo, I suppose, the movers of the motion's thoughts in regards to that. I do wonder when it comes to the work that is being proposed to be done, how much of that already exists? I mean, there's so much work that has already been done that we sort of...
Councillor Walker, would you mind pressing your button?
Oh, you want to listen to me as well? I'll start again if time can start again. I would rise to actually support the mover of this motion in their interest in moving the timeline forward if it's possible. Of course, that we're talking about a sizable budget for this report, so it's not something that we can easily accommodate. But nonetheless, I would have thought some of the work that we're talking about doing is already been done in different shapes and sizes, including work in regards to education, in regards to a certain amount of work in regards to climate change and the impacts of that. This is work that Council has already commissioned in the past. We've looked at the likelihood of floods and the impact of floods in Launceston over a number of years. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to extrapolate that into this particular report because we're looking at flood mitigation here, and so it's how that knowledge can be imparted in regards to mitigation strategies. And I imagine that some of this work will be done in-house, some of it will be done outside the organisation. So bearing in mind all of that, I would have thought that regardless of the fact that this is earmarked for the 25-26 budget, that some of this work, if not already happening now, would be able to be commenced and, in fact, potentially even completed, some of it in-house before 25-26 anyway. And I say all that because really we are in a situation where we know it could be any time that we face a flood emergency in Launceston. It might be another 10 years before we face a flood emergency in Launceston, but we are beholden now, I do believe, to see this through to its conclusion. We can't say, well, that is going to happen, but in a year's time. I think we've begun this process, and as long as, and I won't speak for the mover of the motion, but as long as I can be made to feel comfortable that this work is ongoing and that really the 25-26 budget sort of provisions are really there just to tie this all up when it comes to pulling the work together that we already have, then I suppose I would be more comfortable in supporting this. If not, I'm more than happy to work with the mover of the motion to find a way to expedite the process. But I will...
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I think we did speak how we could accelerate by looking at budget amendments and review, and that's fine. Because of the content of that, we very well might have a bit of a response to that also. Councillor Walker?
So I think I got a few questions in there, Councillor Walker, and I'll comment more broadly around some of the topics that you discussed. So regarding resourcing for this project, so this project is not listed as anybody's core business at the moment, and it has been primarily delivered by the water team. We have one key person that looks at management of our flood levy system, and if she were to jump onto this project, then that would leave our existing flood levy system not being managed. From a resourcing perspective, as identified in the report, there is an intention to create an FTE to be able to lead this project, to give it the dedication and the time that it requires to achieve a good outcome. And hence, with some of the timeframes as well, if we are going to the open market to try and get somebody who is a quality expert or someone with experience in both project management and understanding of complex flood scenarios like we have here in Launceston, we're looking for a high quality candidate, which might take some time. Regarding the work that has already been done in this space, yes, we have been looking at the impacts of flooding on Launceston since European settlement here. And you'll see in section 2 of the scoping study that there's a detailed summary of all the different work that has been done. You'll also see in there that there are some key challenges and some issues that have been highlighted with some of the previous work. So the things have changed, essentially. As Councillor Britton alluded to, there has been an increase in climate. We have seen flooding changes. We've seen differences in the way that we accommodate and calculate economic scenarios relating to the impact of flooding. So the work that led to the original construction of the levees was really just about how much it costs to build something. We looked more recently at how much it costs to build and what the direct economic impact is, and our proposal here is to look more broadly and holistically at wider community impacts, not just direct economic impacts. So if we do get a FTE on board soon, our intention would be to start to actually flesh out what that framework would look like, best practice considerations. We've mentioned to climate change, so yes, we have done studies around climate change. In the last 2 months, there has been a very significant shift at the national level as to how climate change considerations are calculated, potentially with consideration of some of those rainfall events that we did see a few years ago, which highlights that potentially some of the estimates that we had done based on best practice at the time are, shall we say, undercooked when it comes to climate, so the impact may be far greater than we have identified in our previous modelling, and there is some information around that in the report as well.
Thank you for that clarification. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Pentridge?
I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with some of the things that have been said. I think it's 20 years ago now with New Orleans, and we sent people from this place over there. I have to agree with Councillor Britton. Surely to God, in this last 20 years we've done something, and the climate change has really got nothing to do with it. I mean, a flood's a flood, whether it's caused by climate change or whether it's caused by some freak event from Antarctica, it's still a flood. So what have we done over the 20 years from sending people to New Orleans to look at what happened when we had that storm in the Mexican Gulf or whatever it was? So I think there should have been. If there hasn't been, then shame on us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Any further comments around the table? No? Councillor Britton to close. And just, if it has the mover and the seconder's permission, there's going to be one word that is changed that's a duplicate in the recommendation. So endorses the flood mitigation strategy, scoping strategy. I didn't think it was strange stuff. Scoping study, that should be there. So if that's okay with the mover and the seconder, that it's just the scoping study. No, it's not, we're already doing the strategy part before that. So cool, and that's okay? Yep, cool, okay. Anything to close then, Councillor Britton?
No, thanks very much for the conversation. Look forward to talking to CEO and the CFO about moving that forward as much as we can. Thank you. Bye.
Sure, thank you. Okay, putting it to the table then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 19.3, we've got the Queen Victorian Jubilee Drinking Fountain Restoration Project, non-application of public tender process. We thank the team for the ability to go and have a bit of a look this morning for those councillors that were able to. What we've got here is the recommendation that council notes the conservation report of the Children's Jubilee Drinking Fountain included as attachment 1 in the report in the agenda. And it also resolves by absolute majority the published conditions. I won't go through all of those, but they are extensive and they are in there. If anybody wants to pick out a couple, that's their obligation to do that. So somebody to move. Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we did go and have a look at the condition of the Children's Jubilee Drinking Fountain down there at Glasgow Engineering this morning, and it was stunning to think how not poorly maintained. It had been painted, it had been repaired over the years, but the effect of that, of something that was probably in excess of 130 years old, had almost lost it. However, we have seemingly started a restoration project, and the problem is we're maybe 50% through it, maybe not, and we've already spent nearly $100,000. And so this motion today is that if the amount to be spent exceeds the current exceeds $250,000, then if we don't pass a motion to say that we won't put it to public tender, that this is still allowed to occur. So that's really all we're doing today. So we are entrusting that the CEO will in fact be able to negotiate on our behalf with Glasgow Engineering to complete the job of the restoration of the drinking fountain, making good for another 130 years or more, But if that needs to be a greater amount that exceeds the tender line of $250,000, then so be it. However, it does bring into focus how you can start down what seems a simple path to do some restoration work on something that is old and end up into a bit of a bottomless money pit if you're not careful. This is in fact quite a rare piece of 1900s or 1800s public infrastructure made for the Queen's Jubilee in the 1896, I think it was. And it is something that is, whilst not unique in the world, there's not many of them left. It will be repaired and it will be restored. And unlike your grandfather's axe that had 5 handles and 2 heads, and wasn't really your grandfather's axe at the end of the time, in fact, this will have 98% or more of the original still included. So this, in fact, is a good representation of restoration work to bring it back to life, make it useful again, but also to fix what technology has enabled us to do with use of fastenings like stainless steel that won't rust and turn into just flaky bits of metal that were holding it all together, as well as the restoration work has unearthed the great detail of what went into the original design and casting of it in cast iron. So I do stand to support this recommendation, but I do have a slight caveat on it that we've got to be careful we don't go down this track too often, because sometimes a restoration of what seems like a historic piece of something can end up becoming a bit of a bottomless money pit. However, in this case, I'm reasonably comfortable that the costs will be contained and hopefully will end up short of the $250,000 tender limit. But the CEO will do his best to make sure that the council's financial interests are well looked after. So I do ask my fellow councillors to support this motion today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge.
I can't help but be somewhat confused by Councillor Harris's comments. I'd like to think that for a start, his reference to maintenance was a pretty poor word for patch up, and I don't think patch up would even cover it. I mean, it's like a lot of our beautiful items. It's been, we've neglected it until the stage where, thank God, someone had enough brains to realise we were very close to losing that fountain. And although I'm not a great lover of delegation, I'm pretty sure, and from where I stand, $250,000 is but a grain of sand, right? In relationship, it's a priceless piece of architecture, and I think Glasgow will do a great job, and they've done a great job, and there isn't anyone else that I can think of that could do it here locally. They're a company that's been here a long time, they've done a great job and provided a great service to Launceston, and I think that whatever it costs, but it's, you wouldn't buy anything, you wouldn't buy a plastic model of that for $250,000. So let's spend the money, well, regardless of this, and let's look at the next ones we're going to start working on before we do lose it. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Walker?
It is interesting to note that when it was purchased in the 1890s, that in fact we didn't quite have the money to pay it all off at the time, and had to do a bit more of a fundraiser. It sounds like history's repeating itself.
Children did.
We need a bit more money to repair it this time. So be it. It's not something that it's not something that anyone's going to quibble about. Again, one of those things that you probably do take for granted in a way. You see it in the park, and then all of a sudden you realise what a special thing it is, and look forward to the day that it does get reinstated. Perhaps we can do the parade with the mayor and the councillors down the street and saluting and all that sort of thing that they did when it was put there 130 years ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further comments around the table? Okay, anything to close, Councillor Harris?
For a piece of history, I've got a gentleman who does some research for me. His grandmother, as a child, was actually there at the opening of it. So it's really, it is there's a lot of history with it, and there would be a lot of other people that would probably remember
those stories.
that being installed. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Councillor Professor Razay.
I would like to add
Councillors.
I would like to add to the historical value of this piece. Launceston is rich with historical monuments, and I expect there are so many pieces are hidden around Launceston, and I hope that they can be resurrected and also, repaired, because Launceston value as a historical and heritage city will increase in value in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Professor Razay. Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
No, nothing to close.
Excellent. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? It's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20, we have Organisational Services Network. 20.1, Aboriginal Partnership Plan, Year 1 Report. Recommendation is that Council receives and approves the release of the Year 1 Report for the Aboriginal Partnership Plan. I've got a mover, Councillor Walker. And seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Walker.
Thank you that we receive and approve the release of the Year 1 report for the Aboriginal Partnership Plan. I was very proud to be the councillor involved in moving the motion to establish an Aboriginal Partnership Plan in conjunction with our previous CEO and working closely with members of the Aboriginal community. What it means is that the Launceston Council is firmly on a path of communicating and connecting with its Aboriginal community, and that's one of the key actions for the Aboriginal Partnership Plan is to close the communication loop, and the attached report fulfils that obligation by reviewing the past year and providing an update to the community on the progress and achievements. Well, let's just stop for a minute, take an assessment of what we have achieved, but also have a look at what much more we do need to do. This is just the beginning of a journey, and what I do like to remind myself and my fellow councillors is that communication is really the key, that we should continually make efforts to connect with our Aboriginal community, as we would with any other community in Launceston, but especially the Aboriginal community, considering the prior, would you say, neglect, if not sort of ignorance that the council might have displayed towards our Indigenous community. So now is the time to have that door open constantly, to make efforts to communicate with the Aboriginal community on a range of issues, and to not always agree, to not expect to always have to agree, but expect to listen and to learn, because that is the journey that the whole society is on at the moment. And if the council can lead the way in any particular area of concern, then this is something that we must continue to develop over time. And from that, we can build trust, and we can build a connection that will allow us to make decisions together and allow us to step forward together. So thank you for the report, and I fully support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Pentridge?
I have to agree with everything that Councillor Walker said. I need to sort of maybe refer back to the last item about our Jubilee fountain. That might have been neglected for the last couple of 100 years, but our Indigenous brothers have been neglected for nearly as long. So let's do what we can do and move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further comments around the table? Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. I'd just like to turn to the what is next section. I think it's really important that we reflect on the cultural safety and awareness training that we had as councillors and how absolutely magnificent that was. That was really one of the best days I've ever spent on council. And what I took away from that, apart from just the generosity of spirit that it was given with, was the sense that our Pala and Pakana community are just consulted over consulted. You know, we know how this stuff works sometimes. We put a plan like this in place, like any organisation does. We consult with the Pala and Pakana community and we tick that box. And I never want to be that organisation. And I know with the team that we've got here that we won't be. And for me, that's really the most important thing, that we make sure we listen as much as we ask. We ask when we need to, and we don't just ask for the sake of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dawkins. Any further comments around the table? To close, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And some of the things that have happened where we have partnered with the TAC on matters of punch bowl with the playground there, doing some consultation, where we've used Aboriginal artists in some of our publications. These are the types of things that are things that we would do anyway, but things that we now do differently. And that is where the momentum will begin to build, because as I say, as you communicate, you will build that trust. And as you build that trust, you'll get more genuine and connected responses from the community. But that takes time, and it's a continual journey now. I can only hope is a journey that the council, will be doing ad infinitum. It's not something that your destination will ever be reached. It is something that you'll continue to work towards, and it's really heartening to see that coming to fruition within the organisation. Let's keep it going in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20.2, we have the monthly financial performance report. The recommendation is that council notes the report outlining both capital and operational results to the period ending 30th of September 2024. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Where's Councillor Mackenzie when we need him? This is the monthly financial report for the month of September. It shows that we had budgeted for a deficit of 1.6 million. However, the actual is in fact 400,000 up on where we're expecting. So that's a $2 million favourable variance. Unfortunately, that's mostly due to the fact that we have a number of vacant positions and material and services that has been underspent by something like $1.3 million. So it is showing, as many businesses are, that it is difficult to get staff. And without staff, you can't get projects underway, or projects take longer than expected. So I do thank those who've been involved in putting this financial performance report together. And I do encourage my fellow councillors to simply accept the report as it's been provided to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton, any comments around the table? Nothing further to close? Okay, put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 20.3, we have 2 Invermay Road limited access licence for Infrastructure Tasmania. Now, there's quite an extensive recommendation here, but the recommendation is that council approves the granting of a non-exclusive access licence to undertake matchday facility upgrades at the Carlton United Breweries, or the CBU, CUB stand at York Park, UTAS Stadium, 2 Invermay Road, Invermay. 2, requires the access licence to be on the following terms. The licensee is to be the Crown in right of Tasmania, represented by the Department of State Growth. The licence is to commence at the earliest available opportunity for the period of up to 18 months. The fee is to be $1 if demanded. The works may be carried out by the licensee's contractors, and ownership of the works will vest with the landowner upon completion. It also requests the CEO to determine the dimensions of the land to be licensed and all remaining terms and conditions, and exercises any of the council's rights, opinions, options, discretions necessary for the proper administration of the licence. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, so this is the upgrades to the change rooms under the CUB stand, which will provide refurbished change rooms and amenities for umpires, officials and players, new medical massage and strapping rooms, a briefing room and warm-up and training facilities. An estimated cost of some $2 million. Work to be undertaken by the Department of State Growth. However, we need to give them permission, a licence if you like, for them to have access to the facility to do that work. The ground and the transfer of the stadium to the state has not occurred, so therefore it is council's building that we are giving them permission to modify. Hence, that is why it's come to us today. The $2 million will be taken out of, I'm sure, the $130 million from both the state and federal government to bring this up to scratch. And it is, in fact, some of the very first work that they wanted to do straight away. And as we haven't yet transferred the stadium to A Stadiums Tasmania, we need to give a licence for them to undertake this work. So that's really all this is. And I hope that my fellow councillors will all support that here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge.
No, I support Councillor Harris's comments and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Further comments around the table? Anything further to... Councillor Walker?
Oh, thank you. I do note that Councillor Harris, through you, Chair, has made mention of the fact that we have not yet transferred the property to the state government. There's still some work to be done in that area. And the CUB stand, the northern stand, I do believe, is this one. I would like to think that, I mean, the stand itself may well have a future refurbishment anyway, but this is all down the track in the future, perhaps. But in the meantime, this work will be advantageous for the ground. So yeah, I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 21, we have the Chief Executive Officer Network. 21.1 is the City Heart Place Plan, with the recommendation that council endorses the City Heart Place Plan. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris, seconded. Councillor Dawkins? Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is...
Just before we get to that recommendation, we do have a public speaker that has risen to the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Robin Smith on behalf of Coffee Republic. Yes, I understand I would call this City Heart Stage 2. I don't know if I'd be correct in saying that, but another document might arise. I would ask councillors to support this. It's long awaited. It's years in the making. But I am disappointed that it seems light on detail. And I guess the cause of that is unfortunately the Birchells project building and the bus depot. But I am concerned in some of the diagrams of traffic flow, and I've spoken to you before about one-way street conversion to two-way. Some of the figures don't stand up for it, and some of the proposals are in this plan without substantiation. So the problem we have in the future that we had with City Heart Stage 1 is when we speak to officers about it, with City Heart 1, they would point to the meeting that adopted it, which I think was unanimous, and they will say they're just implementing that. So I am concerned that this document today will be used in the future to push through things and belay any arguments against it, which is always very awkward. Secondly, this document mentions, I think there's about 16 reference documents, but interestingly enough, it doesn't make mention of the Launceston Places Public Life, the GEL report, as I call it. Not mentioned anywhere in the document, and that was the progenitor, I see, that brought this, I don't want to say craze, but this desire, wherever GEL saw a one-way street, the answer to everything was to turn it into a two-way street, and that's clearly, since that time of 2011, been proved wrong. I don't expect you to make any changes to this. I think it's probably being put together for funding rather than actual planning and implementation. But I just want to be on the record, so it's not hard in the future, that today this is looking at an overarching aspirational document rather than a specific set of plans to be pushed out without question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councillor Harris is the mover.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for staying so long to have your say on this particular item. We're 2 hours plus into the meeting. The City Heart Place plan is in fact a document for the future. It really is a plan of action. There are a number of items identified for the now, many other items identified for the next, that is the medium term, but also those in the longer term. It does combine, as Mr. Smith said, a great number of existing council strategies and how they apply into the city heart. Amongst that, there are things like our urban greening strategy, active transport strategy, and many others. It does set out the CBD into 6 zones: the civic spine, the eastern and western fringes, but also and southern fringe, and then the CBD core and CBD core east. So these are the zones that the report asks us to plan for, but also rather than the big bang effect that we had with perhaps stage 1 of City Heart, where we tried to do lots of big changes and cause a great deal of disruption. This is much more a plan to make smaller changes that, if they don't work out, they can be reversed, and if they do work, then they can be replicated elsewhere. And I think that's really important for any planning document. And in fact, I do recall when I met with Mr. Girl in 2012 on a Rotary Exchange, he said, we blocked off Broadway for just 12 months as a trial. And it was only as a trial would the New Yorkers allow him to put his, convert the area of Broadway to an outdoor dining and eliminate the car. At the end of the 12 months, he went back knowing the answer. But he said, we're now going to pull up all the bollards and you can have your cars go back down Broadway. At which point New Yorkers said, no, we must keep this. And it is a great way to trial something. Because people are often scared of what the change may implement, and whether that's a change of one-way streets to two-way or blocking off Broadway for a year. Being able to see it and then find a way around it is really important. But what this document does do is it says that people are important and not the motor vehicle. And we will give priority to people walking around the city. We will give priority to people who arrive on their bike or on public transport. And we are really saying to car owners that, yes, you are welcome to come to the city, but don't expect to park outside the shop you intend to go and visit. And that creates vibrancy and a life in the city, because no one ever spent $1 when they were sitting in their car, sitting on their wallet. You only get out and spend that $1 when you're out on the street and can walk into the shops. And I'm sure, as many of the city traders will attest, having people walking past is one of the best ways for them to make money. So I really do ask my fellow councillors to support the City Heart Place plan. I do hope anyone at home who's maybe listening or in fact even seeing us, make the effort to go and download it. It is a 50-page document, but it is full of lots of great ideas and concepts that we will trial and put in place. And like many things, you won't always get it 100% right. But if you don't do anything, then nothing will change. But we will make some changes, and I do recommend this to my fellow councillors and support it today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Yes, I like that the theme was building on success. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge what's working well and then move to those sites and expand. I think the connections and precincts are aspirational, and I think kind of having them sort of grouped in those ways was really interesting. I don't think I've quite thought of Launceston like that, but it made total sense to me. So again, yes, I think looking at the plan will really help people understand, and there is a lot in it. But we have heard these kinds of ideas before. We have seen similar plans. I think we're all feeling quite thirsty to get to a point where we see some action. I think that's pretty clear from our strategic planning 2 days last week. But just touching on Mr. Smith's ideas about the two-way versus one-way street. So we are constantly being reminded that it is better to convert from one-way to two-way to be able to calm traffic. That's generally what we're told when we bring in strategic planners and they look at the kind of evidence around the world. This is generally what comes back to us, is that we do need to do something about the racetrack that we've created in our city. We all acknowledge it's there, and it does stop people from trading in their businesses with comfort. There's no doubt about that. And then I think we look at the avenue and say, well, okay, well, that's still one way, and that's been calmed, and that works. So I can see that there is kind of a tension here, and I think we have to explore that, why the avenue works, even though it's still one way, and whether or not we could duplicate that. I mean, the last thing I want is to go back to any drawing boards. We need to move forward with this, but I think it is a valid request that we consider that, because we have seen enormous success with traffic calming in the avenue.
Thanks, Councillor Dawkins. Further comments around the table? Councillor Walker?
Well, thank you, Chair. Look, there is a huge amount of work in here with WSP consultants putting lots of work in as well, but certainly the input coming from our council officers to populate and educate in regards to all this. It is interesting that we haven't made the change that we've talked about now for over a decade. The Gell report, I suppose, essentially was saying make all streets two-way. And I know I've had conversations with our good constituent here who's spoken today about this. I'm a firm believer that we either leave it the way it is, or we make all the streets two-way again as they were originally built that way, two-way. That would have that combined effect of traffic calming, also giving people more options when they drive across our city, because part of this is also about trying to give people options how they get across the city if they are in a car. Yes, it's about traffic calming and creating pedestrian-friendly areas, but it's also about, yeah, but where do the cars go? It's down across Cemetery Street on one side of the city. It's not talking about making York Street two-way, because that is a major thoroughfare across the city as well. So it's not just about traffic calming, it's also about traffic movement. And in that case, I'm a firm believer that if we're going to make any changes, it should be for all streets to be two-way, which means if you're coming from one side of town to the other, no matter which way you look at it, you'll have multiple choices in how you get across the city. That's how it was built. That's how it was designed. And every time we try and address this, we get caught in an endless cycle of discussion about what should be the best way to do this and the best way to do that. This is another iteration of that based on all the knowledge that we do have. I'm more than happy, and as our constituent has pointed out, this is about also, raising this for attention as far as funding goes. But it does also mean that if the funding is there, then some of these things will, likely be actioned. So I'm wary. I think that there are still decisions to be made within that. The precincts idea is great, but it's not something that it's something that will require an education process around it in itself. This can be things like the way we paint our lines on the road, the different colours that we use, the different furniture that we use in different parts of the CBD, all sorts of different things that signify that without having to spell it out to people. So and we've begun some of those processes too, which has been really encouraging to see. And I know Jeff's not here anymore, but that some of the council officers working in that area have brought those things to fruition within the city. So we've seen the beginning of it, but there's so much more work to do. So I will support this today because we all want to see things progress. But I was reminded today by a fellow councillor that it's been 7 years since we bought Birchall, 7 years of trying to make decisions, trying to progress things. And it's not always as easy as you might think. There will always be differing views and competing ideas. Then we're also reliant on state and federal government for funding and for decision making, and none more so when it comes to the city heart, because we would be looking for funding for this. So we have to keep having the conversation, but we do have to make decisions at some point and take a step forward. I've made my points clear as far as two-way streets, or leave it the way it is the way I feel, because otherwise we're going to be dabbling and we'll be dabbling for the next 30 years, one street here, another street there. To me, it's more of a wholesale decision. But we'll see if this gets approved today and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further comments around the table? Councillor Professor Raze.
Thank you. I stand here to support also this proposal because I feel it's time to reflect on City Heart Stage 1 and move on to a future direction, how we can put a community first. And that's what I feel sometimes one way is to encourage active transport and put people first rather than cars. What happened over the last 20 years in Tasmania, there has been doubling the number of cars and there has been more need for car parks. But the problem, the more you build car parks, the more people will use cars. And I think the way to encourage people for walking, cycling is to create the infrastructure for them. The CBD is actually a wonderful place to attract even elderly people to come to exercise there, because it's one of the places where it's all flat. So by all the suggestion here, how it's nice to improve footpaths, most importantly, we should maintain them. It's improve the crossing of the road. We need to take like really more creative action, how we make it really safe for people to cross the road. So I stand here to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Professor Raze. Councillor McMahon.
In the famous words of my fellow councillor,
Build it.
Palmer, let's just do it.
Anything further to close, Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to perhaps correct, it was 4 years, in fact, since we bought the Birchall's building in March 2020. But nevertheless, we are making strides towards that as well. So, and that is in fact included in the City Heart under the now and into the next. So I do encourage us all to support this, and I do encourage our ratepayers and those out there who may be looking for news stories to perhaps take their time to have a read of it and see what this might actually mean for the city, because the communication of this plan so that people understand what our expectations are and what our vision for the city and what our plans that will probably come forward in our strategic plan, as mentioned by Councillor Dawkins, early next year. This is how we're going to move forward. So, thank you.
Excellent. Putting it to the vote then. All those in favour of getting on with it? Every councillor present. Motion is carried. Okay. We have no late items. Thank you, Mr Smith. We have no late items, and we're going to move into closed council. Requiring absolute majority. Someone to move that we move into closed council to discuss the following in the agenda, which is minutes, Alexandra Bridge and leave of absence. Being moved by Councillor Harris. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. We moved into closed council. about in closed council. It's been moved by councillor Britton, seconded by councillor Harris. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We close this meeting at 4:01 with the next council meeting to be held here on the 14th of November. Thank you, councillors.